For the Division 32 to honor those who've contributed to the legacy of human psychology and who've paved the way that many more of us will walk through that door. So for our young scholars in the room, I want to create the image for you, the vision for you, that you too shall be sitting at this table at some point. In your handout, you have a beautiful biography of each of our presenters, so you can become familiar with their work if you're not already. So what we're going to do is going to ask each of our presenters to remain within a gracious amount of time that we've allotted them, so we can hear from them, hear from each other, and be within our time slot. So first of all, I'm going to introduce Dr. Brent Robbins to introduce our first recipient.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm here to present an award to Joseph Rychlak for the Memorial Award for Lifetime Achievement, and to introduce Brent Slife, who's going to present the award to Dr. Rychlak. Thanks, Brent.
Yes, thank you, Brent, and thank you, Ethiopia and Donna, for moving us up the list a little bit. We had some other commitments, unfortunately. I wanted to just give you a little, since Joe Rychlak has been dead for a number of years, I wanted to just reiterate some of the work, just so some of you who may not be familiar with him know a little bit about him. And so on the paragraph you have, let me read that if you don't mind, and make a few comments, and then I'll do some personal notes, and then introduce Stephanie Stilson, his daughter, who is here with us to extend especially the personal greeting. Joseph Rychlak died on April 16, 2013, at the age of 84. He's probably best known, especially to many humanists, for his thoughtful and thorough defense of a person's free will. This defense consisted of careful theorizing as well as empirical investigations of free will, no less, all with the theoretical premise of teleology, or final causation. A free will consists not only of different understanding of causation, but a different understanding of human reasoning. This different understanding is the dialectic. Instead of an exclusive emphasis on Western rationality, which follows the rules of logic, humans have an additional reasoning ability, he felt, and supported empirically, that generates possibilities. To mean to turn to the right implies, if a person truly has agency, that they could have turned to the left, or not turned at all. So needless to say, this rigorous experimental support of constructs such as dialectic, free will, and teleology cut against the grain, right, of many prevailing understandings of research methods. Many psychologists and methodologists would note that these constructs are not only unobservable, but also unpredictable, and maybe even some would consider them metaphysical. One of Rychlak's most enduring contributions, in my view, was that his discussion of the philosophy of science seemed to prohibit. He discussed philosophy of science because that's what he felt seemed to prohibit the experimental investigation of these constructs. His unusual combination of soft theorizing, because he was a humanist, right, and a free willist, and hard methodology. He engaged these constructs with rigorous experimental methodology. I believe that combination was unique and was a fruitful exploration of the philosophy of science. So he was not only a sterling member of this division, but also another division, Division 24, of Theoretical and Philosophical Psychology. Here he produced seminal books and articles on epistemology, classification, causality, determinism, operationism, the limits of qualitative methods, mechanism, and postmodernism, just to name a few topics. And a personal note, if you don't mind, he introduced me as one of his students to the whole new realm of psychology, the assumptions underlying our theories. And he was an absolutely wonderful mentor. Caring, hilarious, thoughtful. My first name is Brent, as is Brent Robbins, obviously, but he called me Brentley. I remember coming out of a bar with him in Anaheim, where all of a sudden I saw him in a 3-point three-point stance, his three-point football stance, ready to race me, okay? So he was just a lovely guy, but he was a font of amazing ideas, an inspiring model to my life. You'll tell from Stephanie's description, who I'm going to invite up here in just a minute, that he's a great friend and parent. Indeed, his relationship with his lovely wife, Lenora, who is also here, was a model for my wife and myself. I mean, we saw them all the time, and they were hand in hand and just famous together. So it's an honor and a privilege for me to celebrate him today as a humanist, but also a humanitarian. So, Stephanie, if you don't mind coming up, I'll take yours.
What an honor. On behalf of our entire family, thank you. We appreciate the effort and time it took for Dr. Slife and Dr. Jenkins to advance his nomination, time of the committee, Dr. Lack's coordination for today's event, and just very, very grateful. My brother Ron actually is here in spirit. Physically, he is in Florida. Actually, at this very moment, he's being installed as president of the Southeastern Association of Law Schools. So Brent said Dad did die April 16th of 2013. Tonight, Mom and I are having fun picturing him burning up the heavenly highway between the two coasts to enjoy these two very beautiful moments for our family. As Brent said, my mom, Lenora, is here in the audience. She married Dad in 1956. They met while they were working at the VA hospital in Chillicothe, Ohio. Mom was employed there. She says she was a little bit less senior to Dad at the time, at least from her perspective. So she was kind of surprised when he stopped by her desk one day and sort of said something like, having trouble finding a decent girl to date. Not the best pickup line, but Mom didn't skip a beat, and she said, well, I'm a decent girl. And that was that. 10 months later, he had a ring in his pocket, and was trying to find a romantic moment to offer it to her, and picked her up, and they were in the car, and a black cat started across the path. And Mom said, stop, that's bad luck. And the cat stopped and turned and walked back, and Dad pulled that ring out right then and there under a red light, horns honking, and offered it to his beloved Lenora. So that's the rigorous humanist that we honor today. And while I do love telling that story, we did choose the title, and I'm so sorry for technology difficulties. My heart went out to you. Been there, done that. It's a horrible feeling. But we chose the title Rigorous Humanist because we think that's how Dad would want to be honored professionally and remembered professionally. He deeply loved psychology. He wanted deeply to leave a lasting contribution to our field, through his research, through his teaching, through his logical learning theory. He wanted to preserve our field as a rigorous science. And at the same time, he really wanted to leave room for the remarkable characteristics that make us such beautiful people. Comparisons between the human brain and machines really bothered Dad. In fact, they kind of angered him, and he was really slow to anger. I remember him bristling once when I came home and said something like, sure, Dad, I'll give you some feedback on that. Oof. I think it was early high school, but I know for sure it was the afternoon that I learned that feedback occurs when outputs of a system are routed back as inputs as part of a chain of cause and effect that form a circuit or a loop. And therefore they have no place whatsoever in conversations about human cognition. See, Dad was really principled. He believed in scholarship, he believed in decency, he believed in free will and personal responsibility, vigorous debate, and respect for everyone. And these core values are reflected in the 16 books he has, the over 250 articles, and they were modeled during his interactions with his over 100 students that he mentored through doctoral and master's programs. In fact, he was really proud of the fact that he had graduate students that took degrees with him under all 4 of the psychology disciplines offered at Loyola University Chicago: experimental, clinical, social, and developmental. He always said that was how it should be, that He had come to think of himself as the author of a theory that can subsume theories of many specialties. As a rigorous humanist, Joseph Rychlak was quoted saying that he dealt in the image of humanity in all of its manifestations. And by the way, I was one of the developmental students. I invited him to be an honorary member of my doctoral committee. Just sort of wanted to show my appreciation to him as my dad in that way. And for the record, in return, he loved, by far, the hardest question. Dad was incredibly brilliant. He was very disciplined. He joined the Army Air Corps at 17. He was stationed in Shreveport, where he worked in the library. And he fell in love with learning, purchased a set of great books, which he methodically read and took notes on. And he actually learned about psychology from another soldier who had studied it. And he was increasingly motivated to get out of the Army and into college. He earned entry into the University of Wisconsin as an undergraduate. He then did graduate work in clinical psychology at the Ohio State University, completed his graduate studies and training in 4 years, and he took a position at Florida State University. A year later, he had a position at Washington State University. While there, it was March of 1959, he wrote to Carl Jung. He asked him if Hegel was an early influence on his thinking. Dad said he nearly fainted a month later when he received a letter back that Jung had obviously typed personally, had little ink pen corrections and everything. For the record, Jung said that Hegel had absolutely no influence whatsoever on his intellectual development, so even Dad's logic, even though his logic may not have been spot on, he always talked about how tremendously exciting it was to have been in touch with such an historically monumental thinker. And that letter exchange is framed, and our family cherishes it deeply. After 3 years in Washington, our family moved to St. Louis. Mom and Dad bought their first house. It was a huge old brick fixer-upper. Mom, the mother of 2 children, thought the 3 floors plus full basement, walkout, painted, peeling, multiple bedrooms might kill her, but Dad proudly announced from the sidewalk on that day that they closed that he was going to write his first book there, and he did. We lived there 8 years before moving to Purdue, where we lived for 14, moved to Loyola University of Chicago. And although he believed he should always wear a tie and jacket on campus, he did most of his writing in the home office in boxer shorts and a t-shirt. He referred to himself as a loner, but he never allowed his doors to be closed. He would just simply always invite us in. And by that way, he was very engaging with his grandchildren who call him Jaja because he did speak Polish before he spoke English. Time is of the essence here, and so I'll just end by saying we are very grateful for the fact that you're honoring him here today, and we are appreciative. Thank you.